So as you can see, I didn't have to take the whole trunk down. You don't have to remove it, they're the fixings. You get to the cables quite nicely. I'm just going to use a plain washer, a spring washer and a nut. Larger left-hand side cables bundled together. Two main heavy battery cables, one's going to the front, one's going to the rear battery. To the right-hand side of the BCM. The red one is my new fuse brake cable.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.
The BCM sits just in here. The main battery is just underneath my sub, underneath the carpet. We've got to get this side carpet up. So I'm hoping I can just kind of pull back this carpet. There's one little clip at the top there, just in here. There's a link below for one of these little fork tools. They're really handy, especially on Mercedes, to take off those little fixings. So there's a sort of inner pin you remove, and that's the body of it. Excellent. I don't know why people take the whole trunk down. I can get to it from here. Saves having to undo all of this. Much easier. So there is your BCM. As you can see, you can just about get to it. It's a bit tricky with the carpet in the corner. You have to kind of negotiate the boot separator backwards and forwards. You don't have to remove it, they're the fixings, but importantly from this side, from where I'm standing, you can actually get to the cables quite nicely. I love finding quicker ways of doing things. It might be an idea to move this actually. There you go. That's your BCM. So as you can see, I didn't have to take the whole trunk down. I'd recommend doing it this way because it only took me 5 minutes. Importantly, these are the cables that I'm needing to get to. So BCM, why do you have to do the modification? Well, it's very easy. You just go onto Google and have a look and type in BCM fires on Mercedes, and you'll see by the images that it can be pretty catastrophic. The battery control module on the Mercedes SL, as you can see, sits in the boot in the back. It's right next to your fuel tank as well. And unfortunately Mercedes, in their wisdom, and they don't often do this, have decided to put the heavy cables, battery cables, onto the BCM, onto basically the PCB. It's only going via a little terminal. And these heavy cables, they're obviously designed to carry a lot of current. Now these cables are going directly from the rear battery, which is your consumer battery. They also go to the front battery, which is your starter battery, and I believe they also go to your alternator as well. Those two terminals on the BCM, they're both positive, so you need to fuse both of them. And the issue that can happen is, maybe you're being unlucky enough and you've got a bit of moisture that's gone down in the boot behind the carpet, and it's just going to run straight into that BCM. And let's face facts, it's a convertible, so the chance of that happening can be quite high. Secondly, you might unfortunately have jump started the vehicle, or the previous owner has. You may have got a voltage spike, and perhaps it's upset something on that BCM. If you look at the rear battery, and it says this in the manual, you do not jump start the battery at the back on the Mercedes. If you get that voltage spike, you can damage something on that battery control module. You're supposed to always use, if you have to, when you jump start a vehicle, the front battery. So the thing to take away from this, the whole point of this modification, is that you're trying to reduce the current if there's an issue continuing to send it to the BCM using these thinner 10 gauge cables with your fuses, your 30 amp fuses, to break that current if there's any anomalies. But this is real peace of mind, especially the fact that these cars are getting old. My car's 20 years old, so they're not going to last forever, and you've got to do what you can to make sure you keep your car tip top and importantly safe. I think I'll take off this one more fixing at the bottom. Fixing removed now, I can pull this carpet back a bit more. Alright, there they are. So I just took the other fixing off, makes it a bit easier, but look underneath here, that's water, or moisture at least. So you can well imagine that if you get a lot of moisture down there, being a convertible, it's pretty likely that's going to give you issues, because if these two end up getting a short to ground between here and the chassis, you're in problems. You really are, so you've got to be careful with that. So this is why it's so important. Now just remember, you touch anything here from there to the chassis, you're going to get a spark, so it's probably best just to undo that rear battery there. Make sure it doesn't connect again. Okay, so she's now disconnected. This one though, I believe is still connected to the front. So you may want to disconnect the starter battery as well. Both batteries disconnected. So these main cables here, you've got one coming from the front, you've got one going to the rear battery, and then this other bottom cable here goes over to a control box just here on the side. So have a look around for any corrosion, any signs of verdigris. You might even want to just take the box off and have a look inside just to see if it's all good. Okay. So what I need to do now is bundle these together. I'm going to use a little M8 or something through there, make sure it's nice and tight so that they're all still connecting together. Then I take one of my little leads here with the fuse on, and I'm going to connect it from my now bundled cables back to the BCM. And the idea is that I'm going to try and have this accessible so that I can get to the fuse easily, but I'll have it down here just at the bottom of the carpet pointing downwards so that it's waterproof, and I can then just reach it if there's any issues. Hopefully I'll not have any issues. Maybe an M8 or an M6, something like that will do. Nice couple of washers. Okay, good. So here's my setup. Get the cables to go on there. Then I use a plain washer, spring washer, and the nuts. That way I got something there which is good for a bit of vibration as well. And to top it all, once I got all that cramped up together, I'm going to put some heatsink on it as well. Should just be nice, one of those. Okay, good, both ends on. Lovely. Okay, so that's the larger left-hand side cables bundled together. Okay. So here's my fuse cable. I've got the two main heavy battery cables, one's going to the front, one's going to the rear battery, and then there is another cable that continues over to the right hand side of the BCM, and obviously the red one is my new fuse brake cable. This one, which is also positive, I've just taken off, is slightly smaller, so I used an M8 to clamp those together on this side, and I'm going to use a little M6 on the other side there. So these two cables will go together like that, and then another fuse cable obviously connected. So the right hand side one only will have 3, and the left hand side one will have your 4. I've got slightly smaller O-ring crimps there for my little M6. There you go. Nice. One for the other side. Okay, there's the other one. Good, right, let's get that one on. So I'll join these two together, and then I'll just put that on one side. So I've got the 3 cables, nice and easy. Just going to use a plain washer, a spring washer, and a nut. Put this one at the bottom. Put the cable in the middle, why not? And put that one up there. Plain washer. Spring washer, and my nut. Spring wash is just going to give it a little bit of vibrational security. Being an M6, that means it's a little 10 milli. And of course, for those of you who know your nut sizes, an M8 means it's going to be a 13 mil. Okay, right, that's those two on. Beautiful. So the next thing I'm going to do is make sure I get these nice and safe, and they're not going to touch. If you have a look here, this is the original spec. I was going to put heat shrink on, but if you look closely there, that's actually tape on the OEM spec for Mercedes. It's something called self-amalgamating tape, and it bonds to itself. You wrap it round, give it a little pull, it's stretchy, it's waterproof, it's got a rubbery feel to it. So that's what I'm going to use, because I happen to have some, which is great. So let's get that on there. Now, this stuff is brilliant, especially when you're working in tight spaces, because it's not sticky, it won't stick to stuff, but once it bonds to itself, it then forms its own seal. It self-amalgamates. There's a link below, down in the description, if you want this from my store. So let's just do one at a time. The easiest thing to do is actually just take a piece. You don't need very much because it stretches. And then you haven't got to fight with the actual roll then, just go around. could go up here, couldn't I, and just give it a little bit of a seal on the cable first. So what I like to do is just go around once it started to bond, give it a pull, give it a nice stretch, and just keep working your way around. It's as easy as that. It's far better than any sort of insulation tape because it's designed to give a nice watertight seal. There you go. That's one nicely done. And of course this end here can then just go straight onto the terminal like that. Put the little M6 nut back on, and then I know that that's all done correctly and I can work on the other one. There we go. Right, that's one done. So these cables I'm going to have sort of sat just below the level of the carpet here so that I can access them. If I can just pull the carpet up if I ever need to get to the fuse. And I'm hoping I'll never need to do it, but I don't have to take all the carpet back. I can just have these sat down there like that. Just my own peace of mind. I'm just going to put a little bit of tape on the crimp just to prevent any unnecessary extra metal showing hanging below there. Going to go a bit heavier over where the metal nut was, just in case it vibrates and rubs onto something. This has got a bit more protection. It's pretty thick already. It's as I said, it's not like regular tape. This has got a rubbery feel to it, so it's pretty thick. It's builds up the layers as you go around. All right, let's close the old lid, and there we go. Make sure there's nothing snagged or caught, obviously. Importantly, there's the fuse. Let's get those on. They're both going to be 30 fuses. Cover back on. I'm going to point them downwards slightly so that if there's any water that happens to run along the cable, it's much more protective there. But they are waterproof anyway, and as I said, there's a handy little pack you can get in the description below. One for the other side. Cover on. Right, so they're going to sit somewhere down here just underneath this carpet. I don't need to have all this lifted each time. I'm hoping I'll never need to lift it, but it's there as a safety measure just in case. I can access the fuses, as I said, just by lifting the bottom of the carpet there and just check if everything's good. And just one other final point, the reason that these cables are obviously so much smaller in gauge compared to the other ones is I don't want the current going directly to my BCM. I want the current to be less, and this is why we're doing this modification. So the thinner gauge cable is part of that mod, and the 30 amp fuse is going to do its thing. Hopefully it will never do it, but it will do its thing if needed. And just remember to put your battery back on again. Same with the one in the front. This cable, this red one here, by the way, if you're wondering, is for my amplifier, which then goes to my subwoofer in the boot. I've got the one in the front as well, and that's because I'm from the 80s and the 90s, and back then we needed our bass.
Sometimes I feel like throwing my hands up in the air. I know I can count on you. Sometimes I feel like saying, Lord, I just don't care, but you got the love I need to see me through.
All right, sorted. That's it done. Time it took me probably about an hour or so. The hardest bit is probably just trying to get this carpet back, but it's a lot quicker doing that, I think, than having to get the boot or the trunk into its service position, and also if you haven't got a garage as well. So now if there's any issues, any overloading current, those two fuses, they're going to be protecting that BCM, which is going to protect my beloved Mercedes SL. And you know what, an amazing big shout out there to the people that chose to be a member. They're coming up on the screen now. You guys, you really show your love. Thank you. I'm just a one-man band, so all the appreciation and all the help and encouragement really does go a long way, so thanks.